Earlier this year, we said goodbye to Minecraft.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
We said goodbye to making Minecraft maps, which is what we've been doing for the past 9 years. And we decided that instead, we were going to make an indie game. Famous last words. There's only one problem. We had no idea what kind of game we wanted to make. So we started this process of coming up with loads of ideas, just throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And we came up with lots of very different game concepts. There was one idea which was centered around combat and this ability to clone yourself. And then there was another idea where you had to go forage for plants that looked like human body parts. So yeah, we were kind of lost. But then Ryan came to the rescue with the idea for Nullpoint Protocol. And that brings us to this video. So in this video, we're going to update you on what the hell we've been up to. I thought we'd start at the very beginning and hear from Ryan about how he came up with the idea for Nullpoint Protocol. So Ryan, take it away.
The idea came from me wanting to share the experience that I got from doing MMO raiding with friends that do not have the amount of time that they can dedicate to reach the end game goal in those MMOs, or reach the gear level needed or keep up with it every single time, because it sometimes can feel like a full-time job. Some raids that I've done have taken 90 hours of attempts. The experience that I get out of doing MMO raids is extremely fun and unique, and probably one of the most unique gaming experiences that I have, and I want to share that with a lot of my friends. Nullpoint Protocol is trying to give that experience to people who really cannot dedicate 90 hours to a game like that. So the core inspirations obviously are Final Fantasy XIV and another similar roguelike MMO boss rush called Rabbit and Steel, where you are doing a very similar thing, doing a party of 4 players, solving mechanics, dodging bullet hell patterns, and things like that. However, Rabbit and Steel is equally unapproachable because bullet hells are hard, and that's part of the experience that we want to not really give players in our own game. We want it to be approachable. We want players of all skill levels to come and join, and we're also going to have difficulty modifiers for people who want that harder difficulty challenge, but the core of the game is that it's approachable. It's better to think of this more like a party game than an extremely difficult raid fight. The other main thing is that we wanted to make it so that players can kind of make their own classes, which is something that a lot of MMOs don't really have.
So now that we had an idea for the game, we came across a second problem. We had to go and make it. And at this point, the game looked like this. Yes, that's a Minecraft wither. Mojang, please don't sue us. So clearly we needed a new boss model and textures and everything. We needed a new everything. We had a solid idea of what we wanted the gameplay to feel like, but what we needed was an art style. So, the first idea we had for a boss was to create one of those biblically accurate angels, those images you see, just a freaky monstrosity. Apparently angels in the Bible aren't very cute. They look like this. So I'll pass it over to some of our artists now to explain how they came up with the visual style. And first, we're going to hear from Misty, and she's going to talk about creating the arena for this angel boss.
Hello, I'm Misty. This was our testing boss, so we didn't actually know how big and complex environments we're gonna make. I started from creating concept art just for the arena, so just to see what we actually need. I tried different shapes like square, circle, but at the end, eye-shape worked best for us. Not only thematically, but also from practical side. I added big golden eye in the middle part of the arena that opens and creates a portal. really like that idea, so I kept it. That when the eye is closed, it works as a safe zone. But when it's open, it's better to run away because you have no idea what can pop up from there. It was functional, so programmers could work on attacks, but still it was too empty. So I started adding cathedral pieces, eyeballs, halos, and golden rings. Made walk-up and landing zone as a stained glass, but I still thought I wasn't fully there. The walk-up was really bad. It was really bad to walk on. Too many random objects were floating there and, it was a bit overwhelming. So I started making huge changes, like really huge changes. Added more pillars, stained glass windows, angel sculptures, big dome. You can see the versions, like one of the first versions that I did. And this is the second version, and this is the last one. What do you think?
So yeah, things are looking up for us. You might even say that angel arena slaps. I mean, look at the god rays. Glorious, just look at them. Can almost feel them. Anyway, if you're observant, you may have noticed that the bosses are 2D, while the environment is 3D.
NANI?!
This was a deliberate art style choice to make the bosses feel more out of place in their environment. And I'll tell you more about why that was important for us later on. But first, we're going to hear from Anna about what freaking black magic she had to do to make this work. Because I don't understand any of it, so Anna, what do you have to say for yourself?
Hello, I'm Anna, and I'm one of the artists at Everbloom Games. I do the modeling, rigging, and animation for the player and boss models, which means that I can take this, turn it into this, and then make it do this. And because of the fixed camera, I can get away with a few things for the animation. Once we had the idea for making the bosses more 2D in the 3D space, I had a pretty solid idea of how I wanted to make these models. Think of it like a paper puppet. The model is broken down to pieces using 2D planes, which is then put together into the 3D space and given bones with pivot points at specific locations that is very, very similar to a paper puppet. Except with this being a 3D space, I can also bend the pieces and have multiple bones for them, as well as create more volume with the pieces. For example, the angel's halos, or with the rose boss, you can see here that the head is more of a 3D rose rather than a 2D one. This allows for a bit more flexibility. But with the spider's legs, those are separated off into segments, with the pivot points being where the legs meet, and the angel's wings as well are made with separate feathers. The wings of the angel are actually very similar to some of the more articulated wings that I used to make for our Minecraft maps. As you can see here, I'm using Blockbench. Each of the different colors represents a different bone, so in this case, each feather has its own bone. The angel wings are made the exact same way. So you can see here how they're very similar to each other in how they're constructed and rigged. The rose's arms, on the other hand, are able to have multiple bones, and using weight paint, I can make it so that the arms can bend and twist as much as I want them to. I've done my best to combine the 2D and 3D elements with these to hopefully make it seem consistent while also giving it this otherworldly sort of eldritch horror feeling that we want it to have.
Thank you, Anna. So we've got the boss model, we've got the arena. Now we need to make it actually do stuff. Fire, lasers, and that kind of thing. And for that, we're going to need
Developers! Yes!
Hello, my name is RPG, and I am part of the Everbloom team, mostly dedicated to making the bosses. What we essentially did is we gave it a nice specific arena. We have a nice little skybox, we have its lighting, we have everything that we would need to have a cool looking area, and we have what are called hazards. These hazards are essentially what causes the boss to attack. Any attack comes from these hazards to begin with. In order to take advantage of this, we have boss patterns, which allow us to grab a different animation, one of these different hazards, and run it however we feel like. Using indicators and special effects in order to sell the attack in question. There's lots of different varieties of these. There are feather-related ones, there's chain-related ones, there's ring-related ones, there's eyeball-related ones, and most of these attacks for every single boss have something to do directly with the boss itself, whether it be a part of its body or an element within the space itself. One of these elements is going to be taken into account as a possible attack type, and typically that is the method in which we create the different kinds of attacks that may exist. For example, we remove the center area in order to let the laser carry through and have another big fat laser go through just to scare you into positions that we want you to be in. There's just a whole bunch of ways in which we can make players need to pay attention to where it is they are, what it is they're doing, and how much time they have before they have to get out of the way. All of this is culminated in this boss brain. This little boss brain over here has all of the sequences that you would ever want. There is a variety of sequences and a whole bunch of other stuff, but just to go over quickly, there is an initial set of sequences that will always play, just so that you kind of already have some level of predictability. There are these randomized ones, which are all based off of the different animations, which all have an animation to play, some cooldowns, and some special conditions that can wait the attack to appear less or more often. So they're not fully random. There are some conditions to them, but there is a lot of randomness involved. There's a whole bunch of other features here, as well as an aspect that has to do with dynamic difficulty, where different formulas are used in order to make the boss react a certain way, so that they can become more or less difficult depending on how your run is going. If your run is going super smoothly, the bosses will get a little more difficult. If your run isn't going as smoothly, perhaps the bosses won't be as painful. So that is essentially the primary method by which we decide how to design bosses, what kinds of things we do, what kinds of attacks we decide on. There's just always something that we're taking into account in order to try and increase how often we do certain things or not.
Have I told you to wishlist our game yet? I haven't, have I? It's live on Steam right now. You can go and wishlist it. Press that little button. Oh wait, I've got time. I think it's time we explained what the hell is going on. Why have we got a biblically accurate angel in our game? In other words, I think it's story time. So tuck yourselves in, grab a hot cocoa, and let's hear a little bit about the story.
Hi there. My name is Matthew Halati, though I also go by Ethiat online. I am Everbloom Games writer and sometime narrative designer, and my role in the Nullpoint Protocol project was to write out all of our narrative and story content. So let's dive into the story. In Nullpoint Protocol, the monsters you face move from solar system to solar system, engulfing entire planets and even stars in a shadowy material before pulling those celestial bodies into the void. Popularly referred to as void shepherds, these creatures seem intent on dragging all of creation into darkness, while their ability to bend reality renders them immune to damage from most attacks. The father of all void shepherds, Void Genesis, specifically targets the homeworlds of sentient creatures, turning whole populations to dust before retreating back to wherever it came from and leaving the depopulated world for one of its spawn to claim later. Now, each time you begin a run, you are adopting the role of a hunter, a specialized soldier trained explicitly to find and destroy the Void Shepherds. Should you fall in battle, though, there will be little to stand in the way of the Void Shepherds destroying your home. There are few ships capable of rapid interstellar travel, and anyone who is not conditioned against the Shepherd's influence will be reduced to a quivering mound of insensate flesh should they come too close. Should a hunter fall, and a species' last line of defense against the Shepherds fail, the Nullpoint Protocol dictates that the species must upload all of its scientific and cultural achievements to a database hidden on a space station orbiting a distant black hole. Through this act of archiving, preservation of knowledge, the Nullpoint Protocol ensures that whoever finds the space station next will have a better chance of fighting the Void Shepherds. Our story is thus one of generational struggle, wherein thousands of years may pass before a new race discovers the station and its immense archive. It is therefore up to each civilization to contribute to this database so that even if one species should perish, perhaps those who come later might be able to build upon that knowledge and thereby discover a way to survive the Void Shepherd's invasion.
So I hope you're getting more of a sense of the world we're creating for Nullpoint Protocol. But there's still something missing. Can you guess what it is? Yeah, we need sound. We need music. So finally, let's hear from our composer and sound designer, Kyle.
Hey there, I'm Kyle, composer and sound designer for Everbloom Games. When we decided on working on Nullpoint Protocol, I was really excited because Final Fantasy XIV is actually one of my favorite games of all time, and it has one of the best stories ever. Don't get me started on that, that's a completely different topic. But also because it has one of my favorite soundtracks that's ever been written, possibly even my favorite. In regards to the music of Final Fantasy XIV, or more specifically, the music of its composer Soken, I've spent a lot of time musicking just about how does he do it? Because there's such a wide variety of genres in the soundtrack. In game audio or game music business, one of the things that's asked all the time is, do I write everything or do I specialize in one genre or maybe a couple genres? And the general response to that is normally to specialize in a couple. Soken is an enigma though, because every track in Final Fantasy XIV is a completely different genre from what came before or came after it. And my first thought when we were going to be doing a MMO style boss rush, it's time to turn the meme into the dream. Jack of all trades, master of none? No, I'm going to do it my way. The good old sit around, think, worry, mull about it, and good old musicking. You know, the Kylidian way. TM. If you've played Final Fantasy XIV, and more specifically the boss fights, you'll know that the boss fight music doesn't actually really seem to always fit the boss fights. But it does. But it doesn't. But it does. But it doesn't. But it does? Yeah, it does. And then it kind of sits with you, and then you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then all of a sudden, you get a second boss track usually, sometimes even 3 or 4. And when that second one hits, it's a completely different genre often. And you're like, oh man, now this really doesn't fit. But it does, but it doesn't, but it does, but it doesn't. Oh, that's hype. An early game example, early being 60 hours, trust me, it's good, is the Shiva fight. Check this out. You go from a classical waltz-style track over to literally just J-rock, entirely different genres. Some things are kept, some things are not kept, but it's completely unexpected, and it's a complete tonal shift, and it's awesome. The vocals are in your face, the mixing is a little bit weird even, and it works. So I chatted with Ryan about this. He's also a Final Fantasy XIV player, and we decided that I was just gonna write the judge track. I wasn't gonna drop any drafts for the team, because if I know my team, I knew that they weren't going to trust the process until it was already done. So at the next team meeting, I just said, I'm going to go write a banger this week. And then I went and I wrote the judge. It sounds like this. And then after it's done sounding like that, it sounds like this. There were no drafts for people to hear. Me just hitting the DAW saying, yo, bet, and channeling some of that big, big Toho energy. Wait, Toho? When we were shopping around for musical inspiration, we originally thought in the direction of Toho music, actually. Kind of like that Bullet Hell type thing, if you're familiar with it. If you aren't familiar with Toho or the depths of its lore and legacy that date back to some time when Moses parted the Red Seas, that's okay. Neither am I, and neither of us want to hear about that today. But the fun fact that you are going to hear about is that Toho has a lot of music. And I mean like a lot. It's actually offensive how much music there is. And you're sitting here and you're probably thinking, yeah, there's probably like a few hundred. That's a good bit of music. No! Individual tracks, there's like 850 or so. That's insane. But wait, that's wrong because in officially released music, including arrangements, that number is jacked up to over 95,000, and that was 6 years ago. What the So naturally, the Toho inspiration behind this track is to ensure that we have 95,000 tracks also in Nullpoint Protocol. Nah, the Toho inspiration was to channel a bit of the style, a bit of the energy, and that feeling of dodging attacks to high-energy music. And rather than Final Fantasy XIV for that first track that I was writing, I went to Toho for inspiration instead, so that we could make sure to leave an electrolyte-boosted, pushing, intense track that would make you say, damn, Kyle, this is just the first theme. Keep some gas in the tank for later. My response was, don't worry, my car might take 87 octane, but everyone knows that Kyle's are drywall-punching, monster-guzzling edgelords. So I needed to make sure in picking a genre of Toho music that I only had the greatest of thought processes. And that process was purple and yellow. Purple and yellow together remind me of digital music. That's it. That's the tweet. I thought it'd go well together visually. There was nothing going on there. So what's the moral here? If you hard, then you hard. Going into this, I had a goal to take the idea of jack of all trades, master of none, and make it master of maybe not all, but a master of doing it my way. This music might not be the most authentic digital fusion or metal that you'll hear, and maybe not Final Fantasy or Toho either, but it's raw, unfiltered, and each track that you hear I have made sure is bleeding the desire that I have to bring you the best music that I can. Maybe some will call the genre shifts inappropriate, lame, or unnecessary, and that's fine. But you can know that I've spent countless hours agonizing, listening, writing, editing all of this music to make sure that it's as good as possible for you. Some of the genres that you can expect to hear in this include classical, rock opera, and whatever the hell this is. Did I learn about new metal recently? Stay tuned. But more than that, there's passion as a fan of Soken, love for the music in general, and a burning desire to keep myself on my toes. That way I can continue to take you on a ride that you'll never expect. And before I go, check out this teaser of a boss track that I've written that the team hasn't heard yet. You all get to discover it together. Here it is. And that's all you get. It's actually not finished yet, which is why they haven't heard it. Like I say, drop bangers, leave the room, works every time. Hey Kyle, are you about to drop a banger again? I'll catch you later, gamers.
We're going to be releasing a demo for Nullpoint Protocol very soon, so you'll get to play the game. So now is the perfect time to wishlist the game. Link is in the description. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this devlog. There's going to be more of them coming, so let us know what you'd like to see in the comments. And until then, we'll be creating some more monstrosities for you. I'll see you then.